So the USPS is going to get a $50 billion funding from the government for the next 10 years to keep from falling back, which they just raised the stamp price to what, 50 cents? Maybe a year ago or two? And now they're going to raise it again. And the service is going to be slower. And what are they? Didn't they stop delivering on a certain day or something like that? But anyway, they've lost so many letters of mine. It's bills. I've sent bills, and they've lost so many bills of mine. And I'm not saying, well, I told them I mailed a bill. No, that ain't it. I mailed a bill, and they lost it. And it's more than one. Over about 2 or 3 decades, or 2 or 3 or whatever decades, they've lost at least a dozen letters. And that's just me. That's just one person. Now, I don't know if every household in this country had 12 or so letters lost by the postal service. I don't know how many letters they lose a year. I'm gonna have to look that up. But anyway, the price of stamps, I looked it up. Stamps started in the U.S. in like 1840. And I was born in 1960, and the price of stamps I looked up, it was like 4 cents to send like a letter. And now, since 1960 to now, it's going to be beyond 50 cents. In 62 years, it's going to jump 50. It's almost a penny a year. For 120 years, it only went up 4 cents. In the 60 some years I've been alive, it's went up almost a penny a year. Only they don't do it every year because, whatever. And these forever stamps, they're going to raise the price on them. They're forever, but they just raise the price on them. I mean, you'll say, well, I get forever stamps and they only cost me this. Next time I go buy them, they're only going to cost me the same. No, they're going to raise the price on them. Because they're going to change. They brought out forever stamps, so when they change the price on them, they know you're going to run out of stamps, and the people who don't use that many stamps, they're not going to worry about. The ones that do use a lot of stamps are the ones that they're saying that they're, that's where they're going to make the money. Is people, we'll give them forever stamps. They'll think, this price is going to be forever. It's not going to be forever. It's not going to be. You can use that stamp. You don't have to, instead of having a price on it, you don't have to double up on the stamps, have this, that, and the other stamp to send a letter. Once they raise the price, you'll have that stamp to run out until you get another roll of stamps, or however you buy them. But this is ridiculous. They're going to slow the service, get a $50 billion grant for federal aid for the next 10 years supposedly to keep them running. And they just went through a revamp. I don't know who's in charge of this. And this was said last time. Didn't they just get bailed out like 2 or 3 years ago? And now they're getting bailed out again. We need them raising the price. This is, a penny a year in 60 years, and in 120 years, it only went up 4 cents. It probably stayed at 4 cents for 120 years. They said that first stamp was a nickel back in 1840. I don't buy that. I don't know it might have been a stamp that they made a nickel stamp or something to send a whatever. But I don't think people, they didn't make that much money back in. And I think that's all they're doing is saying, well, people make more money. Let's raise, it has nothing to do with business. Just like colleges and universities and business, I don't know where it was. It was like 4 decades ago, maybe. 3 or 4. I think it was 3 or 3.5 decades ago, I'll say, where there was somebody going to a business school, and he got into an argument with the teacher about, I'm not going to waste my life working for a company and then getting a gold watch. I want to make my money in five. I want to make my million in 5 years, get out, retire, and live my life. So that's what everybody's done. They heard that, and then now everybody in this country, and ever since then, and if you look back, that's when everything started escalating. As these people, these colleges and universities started teaching greed, and the students started, becoming greed. There was greed before, but it was like, they was working hours and they was working years. And now it's like a house is not a home. A house is just an investment, which it shouldn't be, because, I mean, look at how many people can just barely make the payments on a house. And all these other people are saying, well, the house is just an investment. It's not for people that can't afford the turnover. They can't just afford to, they're on fixed incomes or whatever income they're on. And they're trying to make a house a home. A home is something you love and stand by and will defend. A house is just something you're trying to make money on. So I think this is all greed, and I think the people in charge, and if there's politicians or government officials or agencies or anything like that, and I mean, who do you trust to investigate? You can't trust the FBI; they're crooked. You can't trust the CIA because they're going to give you false. All these government agencies, you can't. It's like you're saying, let the, when these corporations say, well, we'll investigate ourselves, and people say, oh, I'm up in arms about them investigating. But what about the government? What about when the government? You can't even get rid of you see corrupt politicians like that Pelosi saying she's doing insider trading, and we can't get her kicked out of the freaking government. They should fall under the same laws as we do, even though they, what put them in place is when they started the Constitution and stuff. Well, we'll back you. Well, and they made that, and then they, after what amendment they put in, oh man, now I can't even remember the amendment. That is 16th Amendment for taxes, and not only taxes, but then there's the amendment for where you can't even you can't do anything to them. They have to they're self-governing. We aren't in control of government. If they're self-governing, if they're punished themselves, then we're not in control of government. So all this stuff that we keep getting fed. And what I'm tired of is these people that are talking about constitutionality and all that aren't even looking at checking themselves and saying, yeah, it's like their just lips are flat, but their brains are dead. They've said it so much that they're not saying, well, what we need to do is change. The people need to change. They need to create their own laws, and we do. We need to create our own laws to govern the government, because the government's not going to do it. The government does nothing unless like one party wants the other party, and the only party that does that is the Democrats, because the Republicans sit around with the thumb up their butt and go, how is this happening? And then they just talk about it. They do nothing. They're no charger, because they know, well, they're part of us. They're just the other side. There's no divisor line between the Democrats and Republicans. They're all doing it. They're just bad cop, good cop, and they pass it over on the people as they hate each other when they're really operating within the same realms of each other. Now they might have an agenda that says, well, we can't run on, we have to have different agendas, so we're going to have to fight against your agenda. But this stuff still passes. I'm saying the people, we're going to have to build our own. I mean, this is not a takeover of government. This is something that the government's not going to fix, and the people, if they want change in the government, we're going to have to make some sort of government ourselves, a government to govern the government. Only we can't, it's got to be something where they aren't enriched or empowered, except to go against the government. It's maybe people that have jobs and have committee meetings or something like that maybe online. Maybe they're not all in one place. They don't have to gather in one room. We got computer now and phones that we can all, you can have meetings and stuff like that. I don't understand why the citizens aren't up in arms about this, that the government isn't doing any. They're governing themselves, and they're running they're just, look at the prices on stuff. Pickups are higher, cost more than a freaking house used to. I mean, I'm 30 years, not even 30 years ago, houses, I mean, you could buy a house, shoot, 40, 60, 80,000, not a problem, and you could live in it. Nowadays, you can't get near one of something like that, because there's going to be an association of, not, I don't know if they're realtors or just people that are rich, that have, I don't, where all this money's coming from. I guess they're backed by elitists or something that go around buying up clumps of houses. They're backed by governments so they can wipe out whole lots of land so they can put business in it, or apartments, so that another elitist can charge $1,200 a rent on a square footage, that a roof, which they'll get taxed on. Well, I don't know how much. It doesn't matter, because they're going to just raise the rent on tenants if the taxes go up. But I mean, some of these people paying what, $1,200 a month, and that's cheap. That's like normal. That's like normal all across the country rent. $1,200 a month. That's a lot of freaking money. And just this people's going to have to get up in arms. But the problem is, there's so many people saying, well, nobody listens to anybody, because everybody wants to be in charge, and that's just it. The people are going to have to put up something where nobody's in charge. That way, all ideas are except, not all ideas. If it's some idiot comes up and says, we need to, pee in the middle of the street. No, okay, we're not going to do that. Just like the laws for, why has the government not stepped in and said, we can't have these teachers teaching kids 5 and 8 years old to be gay? They don't need it. This is ridiculous. That shouldn't even be in a vote. That shouldn't be even discussed. That should just be said, no, that's not what we're here. That's not what we, and the adults, their parents are saying, we don't want our kids to learn this. What parents? I haven't heard one parent. Maybe there is. Maybe there's a parent that says, yeah, I want my kid to learn 5, because look at the parents that are giving their kid. I mean, who would give their kid a freaking drug to change their sex, to dwarf their freaking growth of what they are? This country, this is like, it's not, there's no book written about this. This is reality. This is what's happening. These are what people are doing. They're teaching this, and everybody's just sitting back waiting for the government to do something. The government's basically supporting it, because, well, nobody's saying anything, and people have got so much work to do, and or if they stand up, they lose their popularity. I can't stand up against this, and there's just people like that, because they've never stood up for anything before. They see other people doing it, they think, well, those people, you got to stand up. That's the problem with these people. People are afraid to talk to each other, because they got some sort of mind screw going. I don't know if it's government mind screw or just popularity. The people in popularity just drop this all on the populace, and the populace gets, well, we shouldn't be talking about something like that. That's not for us, because that's not our subject matter. And if you're having kids, and look at how many people have kids. I'm not having kids. I told myself a long time ago that we're overpopulated. When I was 3-4 years old, I was like, how many people are, or maybe a little older, how many people are on this planet? That's way too many. And so I just decided, well, I'm not going to have kids, and that, and eating meat, anyway, this ain't about me. This is about all these freaking elitists and the male. I guess this is going to be titled, what a ramble, but I'm thinking it's better than something. I don't know. Better than just shutting up and watching. Maybe that's what it is. TV has made people more compliant, because the media will say, well, do we want to rile up the people, or do we want to make them just sit back and take their time and do nothing? So I think there's all these different groups that are creating this this zombie effect on the populace, and they make money for it, just like elitist CEOs. You can see how many companies, what, years ago, or I looked up some companies and CEOs, they would pass one CEO that would run a company into the ground. They were trying to, I don't know if they were trying to get rid of companies or what, but these CEOs, I looked around, and they were in charge of all these companies that went bankrupt. Now I guess so they don't have to pay retirement. You know, they went back. That was back when they didn't want to, all this. I think this was before 2007. I looked this stuff up, and they were trying to bankrupt companies so they wouldn't have to pay retirement, because that, they say 50 years. A big enough company, 50 years, enough people retire in 50 years that it will bankrupt the company. And so they just said, well, we're going to bankrupt the company. We're going to be able to leave with what we got. The CEOs walk out. All the big wigs walk out of the company with all their $200 million, $300 million contracts, and everybody else gets screwed. I'm telling you, this ain't going to get no better, because these colleges, what are they teaching? They ain't teaching to help. They're not teaching help. I mean, look at healthcare. How many people die in hospitals each year? I mean, I'm not talking just from death. I'm talking from malpractice, from medication, wrong medication given, everything. It's ridiculous. And you only hear it spot here and spot here, but there's no groups. There's no, where's the internet? We have internet, and there's nothing. I mean, there's no, you'd think somebody that with a lot of internet power would say, we're putting together a group, and, instead of getting a spam mail that says, here, join this Viagra group, and here, join this online group where your voice will be heard on problems in your community, which will then be injected into a larger group until where it's countrywide. And I'm not talking California law. I'm talking practical, stuff, and get rid of laws that are impractical. I mean, lawyers ain't doing that. They're just making more laws because they're lawyers, and that's what they join government for, is to make laws. And the laws, look what they're making laws for. They're making post-birth abortion. It's okay for kids to have their reproductive organs cut off in a hospital. Their parents can give them drugs to. This is an immoral government that's doing this. This is ridiculous that this is voted in, and people are just like, well, that's what the government. Government's supposed to be the people. We need to. I wish I had more computer experience. I'd set up a freaking site, but I don't, and I don't know nobody. But nobody would listen. I don't know that, because everybody's an individual. And nobody wants to get together anymore, except to screw stuff up.